So this is the endorsement meeting for the 11th Congressional District Democratic primary. We're pleased to have with us both the incumbent Representative Chantel Brown and Nina Turner, former state senator and candidate in this race when the district lines were different. So perhaps we will get into some of the differences in the district, which is not yet confirmed. I'm hearing a lot of background noise, so if everybody could mute themselves if they're not speaking, that would be better for the recording. At any rate, I'm Elizabeth Sullivan. I direct the editorial board for The Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com. I'm joined by Tom Suddes, and we will be joined, I believe, by Mary Kay Doherty of the editorial board, and we are representing the rest of the editorial board in this interview. Tom?
Good morning. Thank you for being here today. My name is Tom Suddes. I'm on the editorial board of The Plain Dealer, and I also write a column on Sundays in The Plain Dealer. I know how busy you both are, and I really appreciate you being here today.
And Tom will be taking the lead in the questioning today. And then we're joined by Sabrina Eaton from our Washington Bureau, who covers Congress. Sabrina?
Hey there, you guys know me. I'm going to just, keep quiet for the most part. So
we may give Sabrina a chance to ask a question toward the end of the conversation. As I mentioned before the recording started, Sabrina is here for the news value of this discussion, and she plays no role, absolutely none, in our endorsement decision. And again, I'd like to welcome the candidates and thank them for their time. Representative Brown, do you want to just state your name and a couple of details about you so people listening to the audio can hear your voice?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having this, and thank you for having me. I am Congresswoman Chantel Brown, representing Ohio's 11th Congressional District. Have the distinct honor and privilege of having served in the seat a little around 160 days now, and have had the awesome privilege of being able to represent the people of Ohio's 11th Congressional District, coming out of a very hotly contested special election last year, where there were 13 of us, and it came down to the two women you see on this call today. And I'm proud to say the majority of the constituents in the 11th Congressional District elected me to serve in this capacity, and I hope that they will do it again.
Thank you. And Nina Turner.
And thank you. Good morning. I too am excited about being here this morning and the opportunity to discuss robust ideas about the future of the new 11th Congressional District. About 30% of this district will be new. So new people, new district, new time. I've served in this community as both a Cleveland City Councilwoman, a state senator, assistant professor of history at Cuyahoga Community College. I worked for the Cleveland Municipal School District, served in administration of Mayor Michael R. White, served as chair of party engagement for the Ohio Democratic Party. So I've been blessed, and I call it a blessing, to be able to serve this community both in greater Cleveland and statewide in various capacities. And I am running in this race because there is a need for a fighter in this district to restore the historic nature of this district. The fight, people need someone fighting for them and somebody fighting with them. And it will be my distinct honor to serve as the next Congresswoman of this district.
Thank you. I'm going to turn the floor over to Tom now for the detailed questions that he will have for the candidates. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here again. As I said, I know you're both very busy and your time is much appreciated and very gratefully accepted. I'm going to start with Congresswoman Brown. In your time in Congress so far, would you enumerate for those listening in some of the things you consider to have been your major accomplishments in your time so far in Congress for the district and for Greater Cleveland?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. I'm proud to say, after being elected November 2nd, flew into Washington on Wednesday, November the 3rd, was sworn in Thursday, November the 4th, and immediately starting taking votes. That Friday was the early morning started. Our workday started at 8:30 in the morning, but ended at 1:30 a.m. Saturday with a vote being cast for the bipartisan infrastructure law, which will deliver billions of dollars to Northeast Ohio. $1.8 billion alone just in road repair. And I think the people who drive around the streets of Cuyahoga County, specifically in the 11th Congressional District, can appreciate the $1.8 billion investment that will go towards repairing potholes, saving them money on tire repairs, and also reducing commute times. This will inevitably create thousands of long overdue jobs in our district, giving us an economic boost. In addition to that, we've been able to deliver $96.7 million for bridge repair, small to medium-sized bridges that have a C- or worse grade that we utilize every day as citizens going to and from work, school, church, hospitals. Our first responders are using these bridges. And historically, you would need to get a municipal or regional match to be able to address these small to medium-sized bridges. Well, this will be 100% federally funded. And by the words of the gentleman representing the unions, who will have a great opportunity to participate on these projects, that $96.7 million will create hundreds of jobs alone. In addition to that, we will be addressing the long overdue need for internet broadband, high-speed internet broadband in Cleveland. Nearly 1 in 3 households, we're talking about 30% of the population in Cleveland, do not have access. This is not an affordability issue solely, it is access. But in addition to providing everyone with access to the internet via a $100 million investment, we are going to make sure that affordability is taken care of. This administration had the foresight, wisdom, as well as the Congress to make sure that there were priorities given to those communities have been long underserved and too often overlooked. So the communities in the greatest need are the ones that will be first in line to receive these resources. And finally, within that same bipartisan infrastructure package, we will be eliminating lead pipes, not 10%, not 20%, but all of the lead pipes in Ohio. And that's over 650,000 lead pipes. And so again, this Congress and this administration is committed to doing the work for those communities that have been historically underserved and overlooked, making them a priority and first in line to receive these resources to deal with decades of disparity and disinvestment. So the bipartisan infrastructure bill alone is one that I'm proud of, but I could go on if you'd like me to.
Well, thank you very much.
I do want to just jump in here because Mary Kay Doherty, another member of the editorial board, has joined us. And we were expecting you, Mary Kay. We know that you just had a class that ended, but if you could quickly introduce yourself just so your voice is heard on the audio, that would be great. You're muted, Mary Kay.
Yes, hi, welcome, and so sorry I was late, but happy to be here now, so thank you.
All right, back to you, Tom.
I'd like to ask Senator Turner, and that's how I remember her best from her time in the legislature, to make a case for why the incumbent congressperson should be replaced. That's to say only that anyone challenging an incumbent has to make a case for why he or she would do a more responsive or appropriate job for the district than the incumbent has done. Senator, what do you say about that?
Absolutely, Tom, and it's good to see you again. You know, this region, this district needs a fighter. It's one thing to vote the right way. It's another thing to put something on the line and fight the right way. It's one thing to be born on third base, and once you make it home, say that you made it home. All of those projects that were just named are wonderful, tremendous projects. This district needs it. This nation needs it. It's long overdue in terms of the infrastructure. But what did not happen in that Congress has not happened yet. Primarily because of the recalcitrance of GOP members, and then we got a few recalcitrants on the Democratic side too, is the human infrastructure side, the Build Back Better. And that is something, those two things should have been placed in play together. You cannot just simply rebuild roads and bridges, which again, they are necessary, without rebuilding the human infrastructure. If Big Mama can't afford her rent or to pay her mortgage, a paved road doesn't do her much good. And so we must have both of those things at the same time. Drawing on the history of this district, which the plain dealer, when it endorsed me during the special election, laid out that the legacy of Congressman Louis Stokes was vitally important. In that same editorial, the editorial board made it known that I was the best one to carry out that legacy. Why do I bring that up? is because we are in perilous times. There is crisis in the city, there's crisis in the state. God knows crisis in this nation and also crisis in this world. And so, what people do absolutely need, and what I am hearing every day on the streets of greater Cleveland, is somebody who is going to fight for them. People are actually giving up because they cannot afford the basic things that they need to survive. That is food, that is gas. We know that inflation is tearing through this country, and people absolutely need some relief. So whether that relief is canceling student debt, which the President of the United States of America has the power and the capacity to do right now, right this minute, all he has to do is sign an executive order, the same authority that he has right now to put a moratorium on that student debt, which I am so glad that he has. But that has come because people have put pressure on this administration to do so. And, people run from pressure sometimes. Pressure is a good thing. Pressure is what allowed Black people to overcome enslavement in this country. Pressure is what gave women the right to vote in this nation when the status quo at the time were very happy with seeing women not be able to vote. Pressure is what created the 21st congressional district, which is now the 11th congressional district. It was that pressure of the Stokes brothers, the vision that they had to create the first African-American led district in the great state of Ohio. So pressure is a good thing. Having a vision that provides provision for the people, being out there on the sidelines with them, as I have been. I mean, we have Sherwin-Williams workers, by one example right now, who are who are on strike for better wages, better work conditions. So while it is a beautiful thing, and I'm just using this as an example, that we will have a bright, shiny Sherwin-Williams headquarters in downtown Cleveland, I am all for that. But I'm also for making sure that the workers that made it possible for Sherwin-Williams to build that bright, shiny headquarters don't have to be on strike for better wages, work conditions, and benefits. So I am running in this race because it is a new time. It is new people. It is new district. And the 30% of this district that did not get the opportunity to participate in the special election because they were not in it should have an opportunity to have a choice.
Thank you very much. Representative Brown, as you know, I beg your pardon. Excuse me. As you know, right now in Congress, and elsewhere in this country, there is a very, very interesting and very crucial quest, depending on your point of view, to either deprive people of the right to vote or to help protect the right to vote. Issues have been raised in Congress about the Voting Rights Act and so forth, about protecting the most precious right of all, which is our suffrage. What do you see right now as the prospect for strengthening, protecting the right to vote in the United States through congressional action?
Thank you for the question. So we continue to fight for voting rights every day, as we are very much aware on this call. There are 49 states that are proposing over 400 voter suppression laws throughout this country. So it is vitally important that we pass some federal legislation to continue to protect the right that we so fundamentally deserve. And what has happened historically, as my challenger pointed out, is there has been a lot of attention given to two Democrats that have held up this progress on the Senate side. But I feel that there has not been enough credit or attention given to the 16 Republicans out of 50 that are standing in the way of progress. 16 of the 50 Republicans on the Senate side reauthorized the Voting Rights Act the last time it was up for reauthorization under the Bush administration. So what has changed? Well, I'm glad that you asked. What has changed is that Democrats have been winning. Democrats delivered the presidency. Democrats delivered the House with a slim majority and the Senate with an even slimmer majority. And I even shudder at the expression of a majority, because 50+1 certainly has not allowed us to get past legislation that we're speaking of right now, which is voting rights. So as a proud member of the Congressional Black Caucus, where the CBC is often referred to as the conscience of the Congress, we continue to have discussions so that we can move at least some form of voting rights forward. Pre-clearance, for example, is still on the table, and a regular conversation for us to be able to move that forward so that we don't see what we saw during the 2020 primary, where precincts and voting locations were closed arbitrarily. And yes, the pandemic made that part of the problem, but we certainly had options and solutions that we could have put in place. such as increasing ballot boxes. And so those are the things that we continue to fight for in the Freedom to Vote, right? The Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Those are the things that are on the table and that continue to be a high priority for this Congress. But be clear, the House has done its job. We passed the legislation. It is stalemated and installed in the Senate. So what we have to do is make sure that we get more people in the Senate, and we have some great candidates, one in our very own state here, Tim Ryan, to make sure that we can get more things accomplished. So again, I don't take any responsibility as it relates to the voting rights because the House has done its part. It is stalled in the Senate. And so we have to do what we've continued to do. Every time they put roadblocks in the way for us to not vote, people show up in record numbers. And that was demonstrated in 2020 when we had the highest voter turnout in our nation's history, where people voted for Joe Biden in record numbers. And even here in Cuyahoga County, where we had, again, voter suppression efforts clearly executed in our state, limiting our places to vote, limiting our ability to cast ballots and put our ballots in ballot boxes, mailboxes. Were the mail? I'm sorry, the mail system was also presented as a challenge last presidential election cycle. So we have a lot of work to do. Let's be clear. But I'm a person that prefers to look at the glass half full, and we will get this done. This is a 1 and 3 months of a 4-year term. And voting rights continues to be one of those things that we have to work on. And we don't always get it right the first time, but you can rest assured that I am a person that is continuing to fight for this every single time I am in Washington to make sure that we protect that fundamental right.
Thank you very much. Senator Turner, I want to turn to an allied question about empowerment of people in our society. As you know, because of the pandemic, numerous families had to keep their kids home from school and try to teach to online and remote learning and so forth. At the same time, we have what looks like this is my opinion, I guess, an attack on curriculum in our schools about teaching about things fundamentally, including our country's racial history, which is such a part of our fabric and fiber of our American constitutional development. What do you see, if you were elected to the Congress, would be some of the things you'd like to do to help parents get a better education for their kids in terms of public school financing, funding, and also curriculum?
Yeah, thanks. And as somebody that was in a classroom, at Cuyahoga Community College and a first generation college graduate, I know really how hard it is for parents, for students of all ages and all levels. I think it is vitally important, number one, that the state of Ohio has never addressed the Roth. Some of us may remember that when Governor Strickland was there, he tried to address the Roth. Our legislature tried to address the Roth, but we have failed. The state of Ohio has failed to address in 1999 what the Ohio Supreme Court declared that the way that we fund education in the state is unconstitutional. It was unconstitutional then, it's still unconstitutional now. And so the Roth must be answered. Secondarily, as we look at not only voting rights, well, not only education, but I want to throw voting rights in here. Most of the ground that we are losing, notwithstanding, again, the recalcitrance of the United States Senate, and that I do agree with my opponent, but the difference is I wouldn't say that the House has done its job and the Senate has not, so I'm gonna throw my hands up. No, we all have a moral responsibility to ensure that voting rights is a foundational point. I ran for Secretary of State, sacrificing my last term in 2014 to go up against a Republican incumbent that now has been rewarded with the lieutenant governorship, and he did everything in his power to suppress votes instead of expanding and protecting that franchise. But Thomas, back to your question, the point of the matter is that we cannot turn a blind eye, and that is we, all of us, whether we have special titles or not, cannot turn a blind eye to what is happening in state legislatures all across this country. Part of the challenge, whether it's dealing with critical race theory or don't say gay, all of the foolishness that is happening at the hands of Republican Party that really absolutely does not care for the most part. There may be a few of them, but I'm talking about as a group, about what is happening in this country, whether it's voting rights or education, and they are tearing the fabric of this nation apart and reminding us of the bad old days in this country. The things that are under the surface are now bubbling up to the top. So we do have to make sure that that funding is there, starting with the state of Ohio. Most of the funding for education comes from the state and also local levels. We must increase the job opportunities for people in local areas so that they will have enough money to be able to support their families. All of these things go hand in hand. There is an intersectionality. When it comes to the property taxes, we know that if you live in the city of Cleveland, the property values are not as much as if you live in some of the more suburban communities, and that puts a burden on that family and also on those children. So we have got to make sure that people are living as robustly as they can so that they have resources to pour into the pot of our social contract. And then absolutely, there is a role for the federal government to play in ensuring that education is equal and that it is fair. And maybe I shouldn't even say equal. There's an equity factor here too. And what equity says is that I'm going to give you what you need and what you deserve, even if it's a little more than the other person. So there is a place and a space for all levels of government to play in the education of our children and ensuring that that funding is there. And then when it comes to the cultural wars, the Democrats are going to have to jump in there. It is unseemly that Republicans are able to do what they are doing. And you know, this is bigger than critical race theory. They don't want Black history taught. They don't want the history of anybody else taught in these schools. And having those kinds of lessons make us better as Americans. So we have a cultural war on our hands, unfortunately. It didn't start with President Donald Trump, but he certainly put gasoline on the fire. The things that are bubbling up now were always under the surface, but I do see promise in the problem. It is our opportunity in this moment to deal with all of those things, the cultural wars, and also the budget shows what the priorities are. And unfortunately, in the state of Ohio, the Republicans have failed to show that they care about the children or their parents or their communities in the great state of Ohio. And unfortunately, this is not just happening in our state, it is happening all over the country.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Representative Brown, I wanted to ask you and follow up on something you mentioned earlier about jobs in progress. We obviously have right now an inflation problem nationally for a variety of reasons, and also we have unemployment relatively low, but still we know there are structural unemployment, people that just don't have maybe the skill set and so forth to get employed in the job market of today and so forth. What have you done so far as a member of Congress, and what would you like to continue doing about relieving structural unemployment, especially in the minority community in Greater Cleveland?
Well, thank you for that. So the inflation and the gas prices are real. We continue to do what we can to put some sanctions on Russia, because this is really Putin's war that has caused this increase in inflation that we are seeing result in high gas prices, as well as it just continues to affect our transportation, which it continues to affect the prices that we pay for food and other goods. So the administration has put a plan in place to be able to reduce the cost of gas by not only expanding the leases that for drilling there, because there are a lot of leases that are currently not being utilized by private companies to increase the drilling. And that is a decision that can only be made by the gas company's board. So they have some responsibility here. We've been doing some investigating as well as it relates to price gouging. What we know is that there are some companies and businesses that will take advantage of this opportunity. So as a proud member of the Oversight Committee, Carolyn Maloney, who chairs that committee, has started taking steps to do some investigations around price gouging. In addition to that, the Biden administration, I believe, is releasing 90 million barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And this, again, will decrease the cost of gas. So there are several things that the Congress has done already and is continuing to do to help as it relates to inflation. Now, as it relates to workforce development, we recently passed the Competes Act, which is in the Senate, and we believe that that is going to also offer some relief. With the Competes Act, this is an investment in our making sure our supply chain and our workforce gets the resources that they need to be prepared for what we talked about as it relates to the bipartisan infrastructure law. In addition to that, Build Back Better, another thing that was stalled in the Senate. But what we have done is we've started taking pieces and components out of Build Back Better. And you can see some of that in the omnibus, where we have made some investments for education. We've increased the education for Pell Grants. This should improve, again, people's workforce development opportunities. And so there are a number of things that the Congress does on a regular basis, and often in bipartisan fashion, that just doesn't get the attention that it deserves. In addition to helping, again, with those inflation issues, I'm proud to say I led the letter requesting an increase in funding for TFAP, and we were able to get that increase in the temporary emergency food assistance program to help deliver food from farms to food banks, because our food banks were experiencing shortages because of some of the challenges around the increases that we've been feeling. So please be clear, the effects of this economy are not lost on me. And I have been working very hard to make sure that the people of the 11th Congressional District do not continue to suffer, and that we are doing everything that we can to provide resources. The other thing I just want to point out, just as we talk about inflation and attempts to reduce it, the House recently passed the capping of insulin at $35 for individuals. So we are taking steps, and that, again, some of these things were proposed and Build Back Better. So you just always can't eat the elephant in one bite. But what we are doing is taking pieces and components where we can find some agreement, so we can get things done for the people that are hurting, so that we can offer some relief. So those are just a few of the things that come to mind.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask this question first of Senator Turner and then of Congresswoman Brown. It's fairly obvious, I think, if I can be so pompous to put it that way, that Roe versus Wade may be going the way of history. And yet, obviously, it's a crucial issue for women of every culture background to have choice and opportunity if they wish to regulate their lives in such a way by free choice and so forth. If you're elected to the Congress, Senator, what would be, you think, an appropriate way to help deal with the possible federal Supreme Court ruling overturning Roe versus Wade in terms of facilitating continued choice opportunities for women in terms of reproductive health?
Yeah, Thomas, I sighed deeply on this. Women fought really hard generations ago to make sure that we had Roe v. Wade, and they're just scaling it back. I want to go back to something I said earlier. I mean, these state legislatures, we have got to put and when I say we, I'm really talking about the Democratic Party, my party, or we're going to have to put the requisite resources into play to ensure that we elect different types of people to state legislatures. While who serves in Congress is vitally important, who's the president is vitally important, equally as important, not secondarily, equally as important is who is serving in these state legislatures. You know, I'm old enough to remember when I was in the legislature and there was a bill introduced, and now it finally passed, unfortunately, to scale back, access to abortion. Abortion is healthcare, is reproductive health care. And part of it, besides the legislation, is helping to educate people too. Some people are one issue voters. For some people, it's the climate. For others, it's abortion. Others, voting, you name it. But there is a cultural dynamic to abortion itself. And it is the way that we are socialized to think about abortion. And the alt-right has really penetrated the thoughts about what abortion is and what it is not. For it to be legal, safe, and rare is what the order of the day is. That is what Roe v. Wade is really all about. And so while we fight on the federal level, absolutely, a lot of the work in dealing with Roe v. Wade has to come in the states as well, and working to, one, educate people, try to turn this cultural war, this is a cultural war too, around, so that people understand that access to abortion is a healthcare issue, and that decision ultimately is between the woman and, for me, I would say woman, and God and her family, but, everybody doesn't necessarily believe in a God. But that is not the place of government to take away that right, which is about healthcare. And I think if we start to talk about abortion a little more in terms of healthcare, that could go a longer way. But the heartbeat bill, was in the legislature when I was there, and I helped to push back against that bill by showing the lunacy of it. As a matter of fact, I introduced an erectile function bill. You may remember that Thomas, to push back against the craziness of the Republicans, to let them know women, by and large, are not there to try to regulate a man's reproductive health. That usually does not happen. There are some exceptions. But as we saw, over the last decade or so, just an onslaught of bills being introduced to regulate a woman's healthcare. I mean, what she could do with her own body. And instead of doing things that edify our states and our communities, Republicans are preoccupied about a woman's right to choose what happens to her body. So we do have to continue to fight very hard on the federal level to try to protect Roe as much as we can. But ultimately, that work is going to have to be done in the states. And that means electing people who will not try to erode Roe v. Wade.
Representative Brown, same question in general about congressional efforts you might be able to make and push to help preserve Roe versus Wade's legacy of choice for women.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with my challenger on this. Is primarily something that is we see happening more in the state, but I think it only elevates the importance of how important it is to codify federal laws. The problem that we're having right now is this is one of those polarizing issues and very much often a partisan issue. And, sometimes it's hard to get Democrats to agree on what time of day it is. So when we talk about these types of issues, it is increasingly challenging. So one of the things that gives me just a smidgen of hope is the recent nomination, confirmation, and appointment of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. I emphasize that Brown. I don't know if we're related, but I do take a sense of pride, because what I think it will bring as we put these issues before, continue to try to bring these issues before the Supreme Court over and over again, that we have voices like mine and my challenger who these issues have impacted greatly historically, serving in these positions. And that only comes by way of the fundamental issue of the right to vote. These things are so intrinsically intertwined, states' rights and federal rights. And again, we see it in our states' efforts to try to suppress the right to vote, because when we get the right to vote, we have representatives who sit at the table who can promote greater possibilities for the masses. I say that because when we look at the appointment of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, that was by virtue of Whip Clyburn, who whispered in the ear of candidate Joe Biden at the time that this was a necessary step and that this is something that he should commit to doing during his presidential campaign. You don't get there without voting people like myself, the Whip, people that have been historically different than those who have sat in these seats, who have made the laws that generally don't impact their lives, but have a greater impact on our lives. And so it's one of those issues that is both contentious and but we still work very hard at the Congress to make sure that we protect that right. But if there's any way that we can move towards codifying the rights, then I think that is the direction that we will need to go. But I am a realist. I also recognize that is a great challenge as we continue to see these Republican-dominated legislatures continue to try to suppress and repress and oppress our fundamental rights, whether it's reproductive or voting rights.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm going to follow up on another matter relating to, I guess I'd say, the security, the personal security, economic security of representative members of your residents of Ohio, particularly rank and file residents of Ohio, voters and so forth. As you know, undoubtedly, Congresswoman, there's been cries of alarm from time to time about the future of Social Security, which has been a great floor economically for many thousands and thousands and thousands of Ohioans of all backgrounds in every part of the state. What do you see as some of the solutions that could be possible to make sure that we have Social Security here for us down the road for many generations to come, economically and financially?
Well, I think it's simple in concept, but getting it, making sure people pay their fair share. Corporations, the wealthy, we have to get them to pay their fair share. And that is how we can deal with a plethora of issues in our economy. But that is the first start. And then we also have to, the conversation around the windfall, making sure that people who have worked, whether it's in the private sector or public sector, get what they have earned. And so that is an issue that continues to be a high priority for myself and several of my colleagues, particularly, again, something that we talk about frequently in our caucus of the CBC. So again, simple in concept, but putting it into practice and getting people on board is the greater challenge. And no one person can get this done. It's not something that can be done with the stroke of a pen. So, but making sure that the wealthy, the well-connected, and corporations are paying their fair share would be the first step.
Ms. Turner, same question to you about Social Security's future. How would you help to underpin it if you go to Congress from the 11th District of Ohio?
Yeah, definitely agree with my challenger on the windfall. I have written down windfall tax and wealth tax to make sure that that fund continues to have the money that it needs, making sure that people are gainfully employed so that they are paying into that system. And I would take it a step further. You know, there's a lot certainly that has to be done and can be done in the Congress. There's also things that can be done in the streets too. And we got to remind the American people that ultimately the power is in their hands and that they get to decide what type of future that they want. Voting is one way to do that, but we also know that getting in the streets is another way to do that. I want to use the example of the extension of the moratorium to cancel student debt. That happened because people got in the streets. We can use the power of that seat to educate people and to bring them in so that people are organizing and mobilizing on a regular basis and making it known to the people who they elect to office in both chambers of that Congress what the social contract in this country must look like, what we must have. So, you know, voting the right way is good. Pushing within the body itself is good. Also, to add to that is getting people out there so that they are not just victims or sitting back. You can't sit back in a representative democracy. You have to be engaged, and budgets show where the priorities are. I want to see this nation put as much priority on preserving Social Security and making it more robust, because the one thing that all of us have in common, now some of us might be ahead of each other or behind each other, but everybody, if by the grace of God, are going to age. And so we should, or everybody is aging, you know, some people are ahead and some people are behind, but, you know, we're all aging. And what is vitally important in this is that we almost always must look at what's happening to the generation ahead of us, because we're right, you know, we're right behind them if we are blessed to live so long. So to me, the preservation of Social Security and making it more robust is something that everybody should care about, no matter how seasoned they may be or how young they are. And this nation must prioritize this. This can't be an afterthought. So putting as much priority on Social Security as we do on the Pentagon budget would be a good start as well.
Well, speaking of the Pentagon budget, I'm going to start this question with you first, Ms. Turner, and then turn on to the congressperson. We know the senators, male and female, have a high opinion of their own knowledge of foreign affairs and policy and all the rest of it. But of course, the House has the power of the purse, and I'm glad it does. We also have numerous people in Greater Cleveland with connections to Ukraine from ancestry, heritage, and religious affiliation and so forth. From what you've seen, Senator Turner, is the United States doing enough? Does it need to do more or do something differently in terms of aiding the people of Ukraine to resist this Russian invasion?
Yeah, just gut wrenching, you know, and I stand with Americans and especially people in our community, the horrors that we're seeing at the hands of Putin. And Putin is no doubt a madman in every way, and he must be stopped. So the world is taking on this challenge. Our nation is taking on this challenge. I am in agreement with what the president is doing thus far. I think it is vitally important that we provide the help that Ukrainians need to be able to protect themselves from Mr. Putin. These are crimes against humanity, and they cannot stand, and our country cannot go it alone, but we are doing our part. I think President Zelensky was on 60 Minutes, I believe, just recently. And, you know, he said he gave high praise to the United States of America. Certainly when you are in it, you are on the defensive at all times because you have an invading force, a force that has more nuclear weapons, a force that is the second greatest superpower in the nation, in the world, invading your territory. So of course you're going to be on edge. But so far, the United States of America is showing that we have the backs of the Ukrainian people, and other leaders of the world are doing exactly the same. I would hesitate to go so far as a no-fly zone, I think the president is holding strong on the no-fly zone, because if that happens, if that is changed, then you will have two superpowers potentially going to war, and nobody could sustain the notion of a World War III. It just cannot happen. And so we must continue to do our part to help the Ukrainians defend themselves. That is exactly what they are doing, and continue to link with the other world powers to do just that, and try to find some diplomatic ways, even though it is hard to deal with a madman, because we know who we're dealing with Putin. But diplomacy is still the order of the day, because ultimately we want this war to end, and we do not want it to spread. So diplomacy always has to be a top priority, even in situations like this. And my heart definitely goes out to the Ukrainian people and our sisters and brothers and family and friends who live in the greater Cleveland area, who have people of Ukrainian descent. My campaign has come across some people from Ukrainian descent, and they have definitely talked about, the horror of not knowing whether or not their loved ones are alive or dead. That is crushing. And in that we share that pain, because what happens over there happens over here. We are all indelibly linked when it comes to matter of war.
Thank you. Representative Brown, same general question. Do you think the administration, or the United States, I should say, should be doing more or doing things differently to help the Ukrainian people fend off this invasion of their country?
Well, I believe that as not having had the privilege of sitting on foreign affairs, but having the distinct honor of listening to President Zelensky deliver his speech to Congress, and acknowledging that, the American government has been, in my words, a good partner, continuing to stand with our brothers and sisters in Ukraine, fighting for peace, fighting for freedom. This is more than a fight between Putin and Ukraine. This is ultimately about our freedom and democracy. And under President Biden, we have seen historic and unprecedented steps to hold Russia accountable. We've been imposing sanctions that will weaken it economically. And I was very proud to be able to vote for billions in security and humanitarian assistance for Ukraine, including $4 billion to address the humanitarian needs of hundreds of thousands of refugees who have fled Ukraine and have been displaced, and $3 billion for the European Command Operations mission support, and $650 million to build capacity to deter Russia's aggression into Ukraine. And as my challenger said, the fact that there was a plea for the no-fly zone, it sounds very passive to folks that are unfamiliar with what that actually means. And despite the President Zelensky's pleadings, we have to stand strong in that, because such a move could be perceived by Putin as an escalatory move, which would essentially prompt a war with Russia, and that would lead to World War III, in my opinion. So I believe that President Biden. We also provided $8 million, an additional $8 million in security. So I think that this body and the body of Congress and the administration is doing a yeoman's job during some unprecedented times with really someone who is diabolical, who has no regard for human life. And I think it's important to recognize that this could go on longer than we had hoped. But yeah. I think what we're seeing in the Ukrainian people is just not only has it unified the world, but it's done what some folks didn't think would be possible. It's unified both parties and both chambers in the Congress.
Yes, ma'am. I was going to, you read my mind. You read my mind, yeah. Betsy. I just was going to suggest that you and Mary Kay may have some questions for our two candidates as well.
we're getting toward the end of the hour, so I did want to jump in with just a couple of things. Representative Brown, I noticed on your candidate materials that you continue to lead the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party. Do you feel that that's appropriate for a sitting member of Congress who's also engaged in a reelection campaign? You know, we had criticized your decision to remain as the head of the party during last year's primary for this seat. I wonder how you can explain, you know, your decision to stay in that role.
Well, the fact of the matter is the position will be up for reelection this year. So I have not, I have let it be known that I am not seeking to be reelected. I thought it would have been a little bit premature to give up the seat before becoming elected to Congress and not knowing what the capacity of work it would require. And I had been elected to serve a position in a term, and while I was running both for Congress, I was still maintaining my responsibilities as Cuyahoga County Council representative, as well as Democratic Party chair, because people were relying on me to be in that position. And the fact of the matter was, had I stepped down, there was my number two was also running for office. And so it just, if you recall, Kevin Kelly was running for mayor at the time. And so having been elected, I don't neglect my responsibilities. I wanted to be able to fulfill my term as the duly elected chair of the party, continuing to uphold those responsibilities to raise money and to help other candidates get elected. And I certainly did not use the office for my own personal benefit, making a very conscious decision to not hold an endorsement meeting for the congressional seat. And I should also note that had not been the past practice under my leadership to endorse in federal races. So there was no conflict. There was no benefit. In fact, it probably would have served me better to step down as opposed to trying to juggle county council, party chair, and candidate for Congress. But I have certainly taken the position that I look forward to relinquishing those responsibilities to capable hands as the role of representative of Ohio's 11th congressional district is keeping me increasingly busy. But I am grateful for my team who has continued to make sure that the operation runs effectively as possible in my absence as I continue to represent 11th congressional district and again continue to be reelected in this primary as a candidate for reelection.
Thank you. I should just mention that we we did actually hear from Democrats in the county during this period who did feel that even if you cut yourself off from an endorsement in your race, that still the power wielded by the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party chair is considerable in terms of choosing central committee members and influencing endorsements in other races. So just to mention that.
I will say this, just to make the point of clarification, I don't have the authority to choose central committee members. I do have the ability to appoint executive committee members.
Right, and I apologize. That's right. That's right.
So,
I misspoke. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Elizabeth May on this point, because it's an appearance of impropriety. The seat, I believe that my competitor should have resigned from that position right away, period. There's lit piece out now, and she's at the top of that piece as the Cuyahoga County chairwoman, but she's also the current person that's holding the office for the 11th congressional district. It really makes no sense. It is unfair. And I would say that whether I was in this race or not, I felt that way when there were 13 candidates in the race. It's called integrity. So she should have stepped down from that position. It is an unfair advantage, period. And even beyond that, the service to the people who are running right now, the people who are on the ballot right now are not getting the services that they deserve other than this little piece that just came out. So what is happening? We have a statewide election right now. And in order for Democrats to have even a chance of winning any of those races, we know that we need Cuyahoga County to overperform. That does not even look like it's going to happen right now. Cuyahoga County is not going to overperform in this race, putting in peril the ability of Democrats to be able to win statewide offices. So it is called integrity. She should relinquish the seat. She should have done it a long time ago. She especially should do it right now so that other people can concentrate their efforts on getting other Democrats elected. You know, this is the same lack of integrity that causes my opponent to say that she brought in $7 million worth of projects when we know that it wasn't her Brown, it was Senator Sherrod Brown, and that was highlighted by this very newspaper. It is the same lack of integrity that has my opponent under ethics investigation right now, and I think that this board,
let's keep it. I'm not going to allow is lie.
Excuse me, I didn't jump in on you. I think that this board and the people who live in this district have a right to know whether or not that ethics investigation is still going on. It's called integrity.
May I
yes,
there was never an ethics investigation. That was an outright lie. I walk around freely and proudly because that was a desperate attempt to smear my good reputation, one that I am very well known for having integrity. There was no conflict, so there was no need for me to step down. And let's be clear, the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party under my leadership has outperformed every county in this state. Despite not being the most populous county, we deliver the most votes from the precinct to the presidency under my leadership. I have outraised my predecessors. So as I was working as a Cuyahoga County Democratic Party chair in some of the most strenuous conditions with some of the most egregious and offensive voter suppression efforts, we still performed well. And so I have not done anything that I haven't done in the past, which is work hard for other candidates. Now that I understand the responsibilities and the weight of this congressional seat, I have done what I know to do, which is to say, look, I am not in a position to be able to do both jobs well, but it would make no sense to step down when there's an election within 30 days. The results of what is happening in our state has nothing to do with the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party. It is the GOP who has presented 3 maps that have been rejected that we have the 3-week window to run on. So no, this has nothing to do with Chantel Brown being party chair. This has everything to do with a state that continues to abuse its power, that has put us in a position that we only have a short window to be able to run a congressional campaign with 30% new voters and a statewide election at the top of the ticket, because we did not have full clarity on when this election would take place, because they refused to follow the Constitution and what the people of this state demanded when they voted to have gerrymandering come to an end so that we could have fairer maps. Yet we're still here. So I can't move forward until I know what I'm dealing with. So now that I know, yes, the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party is moving forward, and I have entrusted it in capable hands to be able to do what we've continued to do successfully again under my leadership. So we'll see about the results after the election. But we can't talk about, but we're going to talk about facts. The fact is we've delivered more votes than any other state in this county. And the fact is, I've never been under investigation. And it saddens me that you would put something out there like that. It just speaks to the desperation of your candidacy, because you know there is no truth to that. None whatsoever. And if there was any truth to it, I certainly believe that it would be more than you that would have this information and be telling it like it's fact. So it's not a fact. And I'm saddened that you would do this.
If you want to talk about desperation, you know, I'm not making this up. The ethics commission, there was something filed against you on ethics violation.
Anybody can file something, but that does not make it justifiable. So please don't play word games. No, let's not do semantics here, because we can present documentation from
we can't really understand either of you when you're speaking over each other.
I did not jump in on you. I did not jump in on you. I listened to everything that you had to say. So if you want to talk about desperation, it is the same desperation last year that prompted Republicans to jump into this race. It's the same desperation that had Trump Republicans making donations to your campaign. That's desperation. If you want to talk about the Cuyahoga County, we always knew that these midterm elections were going to come. We need robustness in this county so that Cuyahoga County overperforms, and a leader that cares more about other people running for the offices than themselves would have relinquished that position regardless, so that we can give more people the opportunity to help Cuyahoga County overperform. That is the point. So I'm saddened by the fact that so many people who are running in Cuyahoga County have to deal with some selfishness coming from your side because you won't relinquish that power and give somebody else the opportunity to help other Democrats in the county. That's what I'm sad about.
I would like to move on to a different topic here,
Ms.
which
Sullivan.
both of you, I'm sorry.
Ms. Sullivan, I think the point has to be made that, number one, there was no investigation. A person can file an ethics claim. Anybody can do that, just like a prosecutor can prosecute a ham sandwich, as they say. So if she and her team took the opportunity to file a report, it was unwarranted, and nothing came of that. The other thing, I do not appreciate the attacks on my integrity, because again, there was no conflict and we did overperform. We did deliver the most results out of the 88 counties. So we've done our job, and I've outraised all of my predecessors.
Okay.
And so that is the fact that matter here.
Thank you. We're repeating issues here. I'd like to move on to another one. Both of you have referenced the fact that this district is different than in its contours than it was last year because of redistricting, albeit the congressional map is still disputed and still under litigation. But a 30% difference, Senator Turner, is not a majority difference. So what makes you think that there will be a different outcome this time around in the primary with only a 30% difference in the electorate?
Well, new district, new time, new people. I mean, it is the weight of the pressure that people are feeling in the economy right now. I think people recognize that they need more than somebody that's going to vote the right way. They need to have someone in that seat that's going to fight the right way. Whether it's 30% or 10% newness, I do firmly believe that people who are new to this district definitely deserve a choice. Every race, people deserve a choice. This is what primaries are for. It's for the exchange of ideas. And unfortunately, we have been socialized to believe that primaries are bad things. Primaries are not bad things. They are good things. It is the opportunity for people to have choice and to exchange ideas. And so we are fighting very hard to bring to this district a renewed sense of hope, also to connect it back again to its historic roots, the fight that created this very district. If I may give an example, I'm thinking about when the Cuyahoga River was on fire and when Mayor Carl B. Stokes took the opportunity to not only deal with the fire on the river, he took the opportunity to deal with what he called the urban environment, to deal with poverty. He put something extra on that. He didn't just go with the rivers on fire. It is because of his leadership, by way of example, that we do have the EPA and what we know now as the modern environmental justice movement. I am in this race to remind the people of this district that they deserve so much more than what they are getting right now, and that this is not just about what you can do in the halls of Congress. It is what can be done in the streets of this very district of Greater Cleveland and this state and also this nation, because we do know when you are elected to Congress, no matter what state you're from, the things that you deal with have an impact on your district. It also has an impact on the entire nation.
Thank you. Representative Brown, your thoughts about the changed contours of the district?
Well, I'm as the proud party chair for the last 5 years of Cuyahoga County. I have had the distinct privilege, yes, of representing the entire county. So if anyone is in a position to be able to connect with these voters expeditiously, it is me. I've worked with them as a party chair across this county, east, west, north, and south, dealing with helping other folks get elected across this county for the last 5 years. And so I think that, whether it was the old district or the new district, the fact of the matter is what I've heard from the people in the old and the new district is they want someone who can deliver results, someone who knows how to work with others, someone who is about results, not insults, results, not rhetoric, sound solutions, not sound bites. Delivering headway, not headlines. And so that's what I've been known for. That's my reputation as a legislator for 9 consecutive years, 3 with the city of Warrensville, 6 as a county council member, and 5 if you include the work that I've been able to do as Democratic Party chair. I've been known to be able to work with people, even if we don't share the same opinions, even if we don't have the same shared values, but figuring out solutions so that we can deliver results for people. That is my reputation. And that has been what has afforded me to be elected and reelected to every position that I've ever run for. So I hope that will be the case as it comes to this 11th congressional district seat. And when we talk about the legacy and the history of it, yes, we cannot be more proud of the Stokes brothers, but especially Louis Stokes, who made sure that we fought to have reflective representation in our government. And I did that when I was a county council representative by passing legislation, leading the initiative to pass legislation to declare racism as a public health crisis. When we talk about the legacy of the Honorable Stephanie Tubbs Jones, who walked into every room and commanded her respect, I have been able to do that successfully, making sure that we, again, deliver results for people who need it the most. And then most notably and proudly, my mentor, my success, my predecessor and friend, Secretary Marcia Fudge, who has been elevated to the cabinet because she was always focused on the people. And she taught me, if you stick with the people, then the people will stick with you, has afforded me the distinct privilege of following in her footsteps, serving on agriculture, fighting for issues that affect the poor, the poverty-stricken, and those who are in desperate need of help, and alongside of being able to serve on the oversight committee, where we deal with issues that have impacted our historically black colleges, are impacting the prescription drug crisis, who are impacting issues around sexual harassment in spaces like the Washington Commanders. I've been able to do a great work in my short time in Congress. And so I'm hoping that it is enough to earn the endorsement for once of the plain dealer, but also, more importantly to me, to earn the votes of the people that I go to Washington and fight for every day. And it's not enough just to fight, because I can and I do fight, but I am a winner. We need a champion. And that is why I am running to be re-elected to represent Ohio's 11th congressional district.
Thank you. I should note, since you referenced our endorsements, that we did endorse you in the general election last fall. At any rate, Mary Kay, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I just had one question, and I think it'll be easy probably for both of you. I don't think there'll be a lot of disagreement between you, but I know you've mentioned that, I think you both mentioned canceling student debt, which is not really, it's canceled for the borrower, but the government has to pay for that, right? So taxpayer dollars would go toward paying the debt for that. Shoring up Social Security obviously would take taxpayer dollars. Build back better the human infrastructure, tremendous amounts of taxpayer dollars. I know, Senator Turner, you mentioned that, the wealthy need to pay their share. And I guess my question for both of you is, as you're considering all of the financial obligations that go with these programs, do you have pen and paper in front of you, and are you keeping track of exactly how much you can get from the wealthy who aren't paying their share? Is that actually going to cover all of the costs that you're assuming taxpayers can absorb? And I don't know, Congresswoman Brown, if you'd like to go first.
I could go first. I mean, that is one of the things that we have great resources, staff, and support to be able to help us with those decisions. But as it relates to me and the cancellation of student debt, I do believe that there should be some needs analysis, needs assessment there, because clearly, I don't think that those who are in a position that are able to pay should be benefiting from those who are in the greatest need. And I think that that would strike a balance in with as it relates to the cancellation of student debt.
For the 45 million people who have that student debt, and we know it's even more if you look at other types of debt, but I'm talking about the debt that the federal government can control. It's the same amount, I would say, that when Trump gave that tax break to multimillionaires and billionaires, that came up to almost $2 trillion. We're talking about almost $2 trillion worth of student debt right now that can be taken care of. I see this very much as a social contract. Even if we stop giving the Pentagon budget, for example, the Pentagon budget this time in the omnibus bill got more money than even what the Pentagon itself was asking for. It is really, what is the social contract and what do we hold in the highest regard? And canceling student debt is one of those things. We must say as a nation that we're going to not only relieve people from that debt, but also create a system by which that kind of debt does not accumulate in that way. Why should people be penalized for wanting to better themselves, to go to college, to trade schools, to voc ed? They should not. And so I want to see a paradigm shift in this nation when it comes to education, as we look at what can happen from pre-K to college. That is how we should look at it. There was a time in this country where everybody could not even get that type of education, but we made a shift. We need a shift in this country right now when it comes to education, pre-K to college and or voc ed training, because I know that everybody, I think we all know this, everybody might not necessarily want to go to college, but no one should be prohibited from going just because they don't have X number of zeros in their bank account. That hurts us and the quality of life that people can or cannot have. And I want to make one other point here about, education, about vision, about fighting. The Cuyahoga County Council as it exists now, the county executive, all of that, that came from a fight that I jumped in. See, I don't just get into things when it's comfortable and convenient. I take the requisite risk necessary to fight for the people in this county. When it came to policing reform, was able to work with Governor John Kasich, somebody who I voted against most of the time, but we put aside our differences to come together because there was a little boy shot on a playground. I did this in the last month and a half of my term as an Ohio State Senator. I was able to work with Mayor Jackson to create a jump school program that educated all of Cuyahoga County's children who had a C average, or people could apply for it in that interim period because the mayor was concerned that C students were being left behind. So this is not just about what I was able to do on the floor of the Senate. It is what I am able to do back in our communities, using the fight and really standing up for the people ultimately. Last night at a candidates forum, I was asked, am I going to fight against the Democratic Party or fight against the Republicans? And I think that that is the wrong question. The ultimate question is whether or not you have leadership who is willing to take the risk, willing to take the slings and arrows based on doing what is ultimately right for the people, even if it causes heartburn, and not going along to get along or jumping on the bandwagon when it's safe and easy to do. That has been my reputation in this county and also in this state. And if I am elected to be the next Congresswoman of the 11th Congressional District, I am going to continue to fight for the people and center the people at all times, even if that means bumping up against my own party.
Thank you. Mary Kay, did you have any further questions, or was that it?
No, that's
okay.
it.
Tom, any further questions from you?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Sabrina, did you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Great. Well, then I think it's about time to wrap up. Tom, do you feel we should get closing remarks from the candidates?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'd like each of you to make a closing statement, starting with the Congresswoman, about why the voters of the 11th District should nominate you to be their Congressperson for the next 2 years. And then I'll ask each of you to talk about that. So Congresswoman Brown first, and then Senator Turner.
Thank you. Again, thank you for the opportunity and the privilege to discuss not only robust ideas, but actually policy, in my case, that have been able to successfully put forth as a sitting member of Congress. elected by the majority of people in the 11th Congressional District. It is my sincere hope that, again, the work that I've been able to do in this short period of time earns me the respect and the support and the votes of the people, because I worked very hard in my short time in Congress to be able to deliver on the things that I campaigned on, which was helping to move the president's agenda forward and continuing to deliver results for the people who are in greatest need. When you talk about someone who is able to work on both sides of the aisles, and it doesn't require go along to get along in order to do that. It requires decorum and skill, and just to be able to be empathetic and to understand the needs of people without being combative or playing on people's emotions to get it done. I have worked tirelessly for over a decade now as a public servant, elected and reelected again to every office that I've ever run for. And I say that is by the grace of God. I know from where my blessings come from, and I know that this is a calling for me. This is not something that I sought for myself. I do not feel entitled or privileged or any ownership to these seats. I think that my path here has been one that has been by divine intervention. I started out as a person who simply wanted to help my neighbors find a place of safety in a time of an emergency. And from then, the people have elevated me from city council to county council to party chair, and now one of 435 members of Congress. And so that is a responsibility I do not take lightly. I do not take it lightly. The legacy of this seat, the work that it requires, the responsibility that it has is great. And the pressures are real. And the responsibility to help change lives is not lost on me. No one person can get anything done, especially in Congress. You need 217 other people to agree with you. So you need a person in this position who has the ability to demonstrate that skill set to be able to get things done. And I have that proven track record from city council to all the way to now. So I've discussed the work that I've been able to do. And I just hope that the people of the 11th Congressional District, including the new 30%, who I've had the privilege of crisscrossing and crossing paths with over the last 5 years as your Democratic Party chair, will give me the continued privilege and honor of serving them for a full term. See what I can do with a full term, because I've been able to do a lot in the less than 6 months. So thank you for this opportunity, and I hope to be able to earn your support. Early voting has started. You do not have to wait to vote. You can vote today, and the last day to vote is May 3rd. And vote for Chantel Brown for Congress. Thank you.
Senator Turner.
I want to thank the board so much for having both of us here today, and something that we can agree on. We both are fighting for this seat, that is for sure. I can assure this district that I will not be sitting anywhere. I am going to be working very hard should I be blessed to win this seat. This really is about a vision that provides provision for the people. And while it may take 217 votes to pass things through Congress, this is not simply about being in a place only getting what you think you can get. It really is about providing provision, or having a vision that provides provision for the people. That has been the history of this seat. We can't just simply wait until we have enough votes to make something happen. We do have to push and make things happen. As a councilwoman of Cleveland, of the city of Cleveland, of which Cleveland is the biggest part of the 11th Congressional District. I won the city of Cleveland last time, the parts of that city by 10 points. We're going to continue to push on the streets to help greater Clevelanders understand that they deserve so much more than what they are getting in this moment. And truly in the spirit of FDR, truly in the spirit of this district does have a progressive bent to it. But even in thinking about the legacy of FDR, when he fought against the status quo of his time, see, there is a time to fight. There is a time to raise issues. And yes, there is a time to work with folks too. But I can't just simply sit back and say it's okay that 1 in every 2 children in this district go to bed hungry at night. And that means that their mamas and their daddies go to bed hungry at night. I just can't sit back and say that it is okay when people are choosing between their rent and their mortgage and their gas and their food and think that there is not more that can be done and that I got to sit back and wait for 217 people to agree. There's work that certainly can be done and should be done in the halls of Congress, but there's work that can be and should be done in the streets. And my activist streak in me. And this paper knows that I have stood up in times where I've gotten blowback. County reform is one of them. And that's why my competitor benefited from being on that county council, because of people like me and others who stood up against our party at the time and declared that what the Democratic Party was doing was corrupt and that the people of this county deserved a change. It is the same standing up that I did when Republicans introduced Senate Bill 5 to take away collective bargaining rights. Not only did I vote the right way on the floor of the Senate, that was the easy part, to vote the right way, I got out in the streets. So I want the people of Greater Cleveland to know that they have in me somebody that will work, will fight, will continue to work, because I don't need an extra special title to fight for the things that I believe in. I am fighting for Medicare for all right now. I have been fighting to cancel student debt right now, standing side by side with people who are either trying to build a union or who are striking for better benefits, wages, and work conditions. See, that's the difference. I don't have to wait because I believe in these things from my core. This is what this district is accustomed to. This is why this district exists, because somebody with a group of somebodies decided that they were going to get together and not allow the status quo to remain the same. But for the fight of the Honorable Stokes brothers, we would not have the 21st and now the 11th congressional district. Had they just went along to go along and said, you know what? We're just not going to worry about the fact that Black people in Greater Cleveland do not have a representative. And hell, before that point, Black people in the state did not have anybody. They fought for it. And that is required in this moment because the suffocation and the needs of the people are so great. So I will go to the halls of Congress if I am elected to fight. I will vote. But I will also be in these streets, being in partnership with the people who are doing this work every single day, from the local level to the regional level and to the state level. And lastly, I will say this. Everything that I need to know about politics and life, I'm learning from a toddler right now. And what I am learning in that puzzle piece that my grandson loves to put together, that I hate to put together, and I'm going to give you the abbreviated version of it, is that each piece is different, each piece is distinct, and each piece is necessary. And that is a reflection of this district, this state, and this nation, that those pieces that we make up as Greater Cleveland, those pieces that we make up as a state, the pieces that we make up as a nation, that the beautiful picture, whether it is standing up for the poor, the working poor, the barely middle class, those pieces, whether it's having true immigration reform in this country, the pieces, whether it's making sure that we challenge a legal system that is unjust, and particularly to Black men, those pieces that say that we must stand up and fight the fossil fuel industry, big pharma. See, I don't take their money, so I don't have to answer to those interests. The only special interests that I will have to answer to are the people of this district. Those pieces, once they are put together, create a beautiful, magnificent picture. And so that is why I am running again, to ensure that the people of this district, both the new part and the more seasoned part, have an opportunity to have a choice. Are you going to choose a fighter, or are you going to keep things the same? I'm Nina Turner, and I'm hoping that this editorial board will endorse me as you have before. And what I will not do is take credit for other people's work. That's for sure.
Well, I want to thank our candidates and thank my colleagues on the board and Sabrina for sitting in on this. We very much appreciate the time from U.S. Representative Chantel Brown and from former Ohio Senator Nina Turner today. thank you for your passionate, sometimes exposition of your positions. I'm going to end the recording now and say goodbye to our candidates and ask my two colleagues on the board to stay on the call and the rest of you to drop off. And thanks again.
Thank you very much, ladies.
Okay.
Thank you.